And we're live.
Well, thank you very much, James, and welcome everybody. I'm here with James Atlloud, whose voice you just heard, and I'm Mal Burns, and we're here to bring you Metaworld news this week. I would just add that for those of you who have getting the link and are tuning in live, I'm sorry if we're a bit late this week. Our home grid here. The Great Canadian Grid was actually down for a couple of hours for maintenance, and we had to sort of wait for it to come back up. And as a result, we're a bit late. Maria's not with us this week. It's just been a slow news week, so I'm just going to be going through some of the highlights. And obviously, many people's attention has been diverted by these sort of various disturbances in the organic world as opposed to the virtual world. So it's understandable that it isn't it's quite so much to talk about in our sphere of activity. Although I do notice some people actually wondering if the real world is actually now become an alternate reality as opposed to a virtual reality. Anyway, enough of that. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. So I'm going to quickly alter our little screen behind me, and we've got something called VR News Headlines. We will be coming to the Hypergrid News shortly, but I'm going to just read out a few things from my main Twitter stream relating to VR in the sense of interfacing devices and things like that that are of interest to us, those of us using social virtual worlds as well. Our news is focused on the metaverse, of course, the world of immersive spaces online. And I better give you a dateline fairly quickly, haven't I? It's the 22nd of January of the year 2017. And that's the way it will be until midnight comes, I guess. Anyway, let's carry on with some interesting stuff. Time magazine posted, it's about 5 days ago, travel with United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon in virtual reality. They've actually misdone the headline. They've called it realty. No, this is not an estate agent job. Basically, it's a surround vision kind of affair, looking at various hotspots, I suppose. Basically, the UN Secretary General, travelled for more than 10 countries, and he is looking at the urgent needs of 130 million people severely impacted by armed conflicts and natural disasters. So, a worthy thing to promote there. A site called Haaretz.com, that's HAAR. ETZ.com have an article called Virtuality, a tool for peace or for empathy tourism. Looking at the ways it could be one thing or another, and it's sadly focusing again on what I call surround vision experiences in Syria and in Gaza and places like that. Another site, Nanalyze, NANALYZE.com, has a post that may be of tangential interest. The title of the post is Scan Yourself into Virtual Reality Games and Movies. They are providing a service where they can scan your organic self into a computer and create an avatar that you can take to various games and things where you want to import it. And of course, there may be people who fancy doing that with OpenSim or the Hypergrid. SVVR, Silicon Valley Virtual Worlds Meetup, had a post, it's a video, rather than a post 4 days ago on the importance of storytelling. I would just look up SVVR on YouTube for that. And also Upload.com have a post, shorter video post on virtual reality in education, which is worthy of a look. There have been quite a few posts on what they call social VR, especially a lot of journalists think the extent of social VR is things like VTime and Old Space VR, things that have really come along with the hardware development. And as opposed to uploadvr.com saying how Rec Room embraces the idea of structured social VR, and it has the obligatory very, very cartoony looking characters. You'll die and be reborn inside virtuality, the the Doom Room. This again is this is an artistic installation. It's not a virtual world. It's a concept which is the basis of a VR film, and well, it's you can read the report at vice.com. Virtualitytimes.com has an article, a roundup article on foot controllers for virtuality. In other words, if you don't want to wear haptic gloves or headsets, you may be able to do something with your feet. Google have, you undoubtedly have heard of Tilt Brush. It's a virtual environment where artists can go in and actually paint and work in 3D. Google have now created something called the Tilt Brush Toolkit, which is deliberately to teach how two-dimensional artists, and that is most of us, of course, will be able to work in 3D and work better in 3D. So rather than just jumping in and splashing in thin air, it's a sort of plugin that gives you a guide as to how to do it. And do remember that creations created in Tilt Brush can be exported and imported into all sorts of platforms, including, for example, Open Simulator, which is where we are. Another post, again, I haven't got this is rather odd. This is at a site called digitaltrends.com. It's a video introducing Quill and Dear Angelica, and it's this is actually from the Oculus big headset people, Oculus Story Studio. They've illustrated a short film, Dear Angela, that makes creative use of VR, and sort of I don't think they use Tilt Brush, but it's sort of linked to that previous article in the sense that they're using illustration and cartoon as a basis for the VR, rather, you know, which is separate from a fully immersive VR platform, but also separate from 360 videos. So, yeah, whatever. A company called Metaworld, who have a VR app that works on iOS, Apple's mobile system. They're bringing their Virtuality Spaces to the iPhone. Again, there was something else like this recently. I installed it on an iPad and it didn't work. It is so whether this is strictly for the iPhone or whether you can get it to work on something like an iPad too. Obviously, you can't use an iPad with a cardboard headset or anything, but maybe you do it on the phone. Anyway, its menu actually launches and it shows you a number of different spaces that you can go and experience. It's not one experience, it's a portal to various ones. And roadtovr.com had an article yesterday about how tricking the brain is the only way to achieve a total haptic solution. This is looking at the kind of obstacles we face building virtual worlds where you know, it's like the magician experience. You know, magicians know different tricks that they use on stage to direct your attention to maybe things that are there in order to imply something that isn't there. And, you know, they're looking at solutions there that say, well, things that are also correctly can actually trick the brain. And the simple, you know, it means some of the haptics can be simpler than you might think they need to be because they trick your brain while you're looking at it. Engadget has a post, and it is a very weird thing. It's almost like a still photograph of a certain newly appointed world leader sitting in an oval-shaped room, which is familiar to many of you, but this leader does not move. He's like a statue. And it's like a still photograph, except that though he doesn't move, the environment around him moves, and it's spooky and deservedly so, I imagine. Anyway, so that's the main thing there. Rounding up a couple of things from Hypergrid Business, Maria's site, of course. She has a post about VR.live, and that's VIAR.live. They stitched together 360 videos for you, 360-degree panoramas for you, and allow you to build virtual tours that involve going from one panorama into another kind of thing. And obviously that's a business proposition. You know, it's a service site that does that for you. Virtualitytimes.com, interestingly, has a post simply called, this morning, in fact, social VR. It doesn't include OpenSim. I don't think it even includes Second Life or some of the obvious candidates, but it does include, things like Hypergrid and, the platforms it thinks are pioneering in social VR rather than the ones that are already around, which is a bit of an oversight. And Hypergrid Business also reports MyVR, that's MY, and then VR in caps is the actual name of the platform. This is also a social virtuality platform that now supports in-world marketing. So you can find out more at Hypergrid Business. Also from Hypergrid Business, virtuality is a smart bet for the future of gambling. Yeah, it would be. Well, it's already used in the future of gambling. And just a rather nice one to finish this sort of section off from Vice this morning. The first virtual reality ballet springs to life in Amsterdam. And this seems to involve a bit of live action and a bit of virtuality. It looks virtual when you see the initial image, but then there are some other photographs that show an audience watching the ballet wearing the obligatory motorcycle. Sorry, not motorcycle. You know what I mean. Things, contraptions that everybody seems to think is an attractive thing to plonk on your head.
The goggles.
Yeah, I know, but end of the first act and I'd be having headaches, but my thoughts on this and nothing to do with the news. Right, moving on from that, which is the main stuff. I'm now actually going to click on my background screen, VR press highlights. Yes, well, I sort of did that already. So social worlds news. A couple of items here. We won't be having in-world review this week because of delays. We're recording this show rather quickly, but there's not really any time left today for in-world review, and it would mean tracking down all guests and stuff like that. But it's a subject that may come up on that program next week. Linda Labs, the proprietors of Second Life, have been working for some time on a new project called Project Sansar, which certainly appears to qualify as a social spaces, I would say, rather than a singular social world. And it was due to be released this month. The expectation date was always that it would go public this month, January 2017. And there's been a lot of press things about it just in the last couple of weeks of the new year too. But the suggestion is now that it will actually only appear in the first half of this year. So I don't really know what's going on there. I haven't spoken to anybody at Linden Lab to confirm, but it sounds like it could have been put, it sounds like the launch may have been put back even 6 months. Whether they're just still working on the content or there are glitches or whatever, I don't know. But interesting that. But also, in the more general news, here we are. It's currently in beta, although there are actually a lot of people in there working on it in beta, so to speak. High Fidelity, which is a new platform from the creator of Second Life, in fact, Philip Rosedale. And they have announced this week that they have arrangements to get 3D models content with a company called Clara.io. That's CLAR.io. And this means that high fidelity users who are building in there at the moment now have access to more than 50,000 3D mesh models to actually import into there. I think the facility is a locked partnership with High Fidelity. In other words, I don't think you can go into High Fidelity, get the Clara.io interface up and download content that you can put on your hard disk and then upload to OpenSim or something. It might be possible. I don't know. I haven't actually tried it. But anyway, it is basically Clara.io's library is integrated into High Fidelity's own in-world marketplace. And we have seen before a rather novel way they do their marketplace. It works a bit like a Kindly marketplace or a Linden Lab marketplace. But you don't access it from the web. The web page where the marketplace is on comes up to you as kind of a pop-up shopping system inside the High Fidelity environment. So that would also suggest that whatever you buy from the marketplace, including the Clara.io material, will simply go into your inventory, as it were, in High Fidelity. But I don't know what security on that is or anything to bear in mind. Hypergrid, for creators at least, does run a local sandbox as one of its components. So you may be able to buy stuff and use it elsewhere. You'll have to investigate. Shortly after last week's show, Hypergrid Business also posted the OpenSim year in review, complete with the charts that Maria showed you on this show last week. And we also mentioned last week a new grid on the Hypergrid called the Encore Escape, and Maria has subsequently done, or her partner David Karuki has actually done a little piece on that. The the Lumia viewer, which is for OpenSim and for Second Life, in fact, on the Android platform, you can use it on anything running Android, including phones. We announced last week that they've got added audio controls and Bluetooth headsets. Well, apparently, and this is rather odd for what is actually a mobile client, they've also integrated, and this is probably just for Second Life, I don't know, but they've integrated Linden Labs' Project Bento. I keep calling it Bento.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my bad, as they say. Yeah, the Project Bento. Again, Project Bento, which adds additional limbs and motions and stuff to avatars. As far as I know, that Bento stuff, the attachment points don't actually work in OpenSim yet. I may be wrong, because knowing them is now built into the Lumia Android client. And of course, if they do by any chance work in OpenSim, they will presumably work in OpenSim on when you're using Lumia as well. And something else I posted in the week, I think it was came via Google Plus, but a chap many of us know in Hypergridding community, Mine There Always, has a blog, mindthere.blogspot.com, and the article is it to be or is it not to be? That is the question. Yeah. But basically, he'd been reading the Open Simulator Mantis stuff, and he had some actual comments about OpenSim, content perms, and various other things, and I posted it, and in fact, possibly a more interested a number of comments it's actually got since he actually posted his basic piece. So that's it for the Metaworld news. So that just leaves me. No, it doesn't. That was the Google news. Yeah, I actually think we're back to square one here anyway. Now it's 10 days, so it's probably your posts is the other category I want, which seems to be very much the same. So let's let's don't bother with that. Okay, so that really is a bit of a roundup here. I'm going to quickly click forward to Hypergrid news, but then I'm going to click forward to Developer Bites, because I do have James here. He was the first voice he heard this week.
Yep.
He's sitting in Maria's chair, and it really suits him. All he needs is a little tag in his hat saying press. But James, one thing that hasn't got quiet this week, or it may not have been very busy, but it suddenly happens every Tuesday. I think, Tuesday.
That's
It's
right.
the developers meeting, isn't it? Have we got any news from the developers?
Well, yeah, that's actually, work is continuing. It was a well-attended meeting. 8, 9 people came by. Last week I reported, there's a lot of work going on with, getting ready to make a release candidate of OpenSim of version 9. I think it'll be actually 9.1. But there's a lot of work that's going on right now that has to do with permissions. And so there were some things I think I reported a couple weeks ago about some changes in the God permissions for managing your grid and your the server settings, and they've decided that the developers really need to go in and do some foundational work on the entire permission structure. So that work is being investigated and underway. Even so, the week before last Tuesday's meeting, there were 31 changes in the code, and which is compared to the week before, there were 5 pages worth. This is 2 pages worth of a list of changes. One other thing that I thought was interesting was that I think we've known for a while that VAR regions, those large size regions, need to. We've had the sense they had to be the same size to have them
Mm,
adjacent. And someone was commenting in the notes that it's possible to have VAR regions of even dimensions, so 2, 4, 8, of
yeah.
different sizes next to each other. So, for example, you could have a two sim region next to a four sim region, and apparently the sim crossings were working. So I think they're looking some more at that to verify if that's true. But that could allow some more flexibility in setting up regions in Open Simulator.
I did actually read somewhere, and I can't swear to it. It might even have been here in Canada. There was some experiment because I was always told you can't have a VAR region because you got, don't put it adjacent to normal regions.
Right, right.
And apparently there was some experiment that actually got that to work too, although
Hmm.
it was abandoned because there were some serious glitches. But the proof of resin, as it were,
Yeah,
was achieved, even if there was some difficulty with, I don't know, whether it was region crossings or whatever.
right.
Which is a shame, because it'd be nice to be able to take something like it's a landscape region with hardly any prims anyway, and have a VAR region which is just pure landscape, but like wild empty regions surrounding a busy region, to give a kind of size sort of feeling to the world. But yeah.
Yep. So yeah, that was interesting. And on that use case of, I think typically you'd do a one sim region next to another VAR region. Who would think to
Mm,
test a two sim VAR region next to another even VAR region? So interesting,
mm.
kind of an emergent aspect in code that hadn't really been thought about, but it's it's fascinating.
I guess if you've got a 2x2 var region and you put a 2x2 var region next to it, it sort of figures they should work
Yep.
because they're really just big regions
Right.
next to each other. I imagine the complication comes from the sizing. In other words, putting a 4x4 var region and attaching a 2x2 var region will probably be the same problem as you get if you're trying to detach a single region
I don't,
file.
but the person talking about this was saying that if the two regions are even numbers, a two by two,
Sure.
a four by four, you could have different sizes adjacent.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yep.
Right. I'm reminded of the on-call thing I mentioned a minute ago that we mentioned last week. I mean, that is a new grid that's come online. Apparently, it's been brought online by an entertainment company very big with music venues and things in Second Life. And they've advertised it mostly to Second Life people as saying, we use this fantastic new software called Open Sim Vars.
Yep. Yep.
So
I remember that. Right.
nobody had ever been doing it before, kind of
Right.
thing. And but they've actually brought a whole grid online, and it's actually one region, except that it's 81 regions. They've
Yeah.
created a 9 by 9 VR, and they're advertising it for just 4 music venues, but they're kind of advertising the fact that you can get on the plane and fly around this gigantic area, or drive motor cars around this gigantic area, and you can drive across regions for a couple of hours before you get from one venue to the other, I
Oh
presume.
man. Yeah.
That's their take on it. So all well and good, if they get a few people from a closed platform out into the open metaverse in the process, so much the better. They are hypergrid enabled, so we can't complain about that.
Yeah. And if the server and the database are up to it, maybe
Yeah.
maybe that's great.
Well, most grids are, sizable grids are already bigger than 81
Right.
regions,
Right.
but they tend to be, you know, split into regions, or occasionally var files up out in the ocean somewhere that don't show up on the map as and things. To actually start a grid that is just one gigantic var region. It's an interesting way to
Hmm.
start.
Hmm.
The overheads won't be particularly great to keep one region up. Even I imagine it's all on one server.
Yeah.
80, and the 81
Oh,
regions.
I would think it would have to be a sim would have to be on one server.
Yeah, if it's yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, good luck to them.
Yep. So that was the meeting. And again, I just want to remind people this is the office hours when developers will show up, but users can show up, grid admins can show up. And again, it's on Tuesdays, and it's at I think it's 11:30 Pacific time. So
Very
that
good.
can be checked on the opensimulator.org website.
Okay, wonderful.
Hmm.
And that is actually about it. As I said, it was going to be a short news program this week. There will, of course, if we're in the area of plugging events and stuff like that, don't forget that the Hypergrid wide treasure hunt begins on January 30th. There is a booth where you can get the kit downstairs here at Metaworld on Great Canadian Grid. The Great Canadian Grid Communications region also has a booth. I've got 12 stops downstairs, 12 regions on the hunt, and I'm pleased to say that there are quite a few other Canadian entries on the hunt now, thanks because I basically sent a stand to every region over and elsewhere. So that's good. I think January 30th it starts. I guess it's a month or 6 weeks. You've got to jump all over the Hypergrid if you want to win a headset or various other real world prizes, as they say. Good luck. You're going to have quite a journey, and of course, to win, you won't be a winner unless you find every single one of the tokens. But it's good stuff. Also, every Wednesday, of course, there is Hypergrid Safari. This week, it will be meeting in the normal place of the HG Safari is the region you want, and that's the clubhouse in Franco Grid. Don't know what the destinations are for that, but that's where it will be meeting this week. What else? Can you think of any other events, James, that we should pass on while we're here? Or have we got
Not off the top of my head. No.
Probably got them all. Those are all the regulars. There are, interestingly enough, and I can't list them for you. Many of them are actually out in my hours here in Europe, but there are actually other Hypergrid Safari type things going on. They tend to be called something else. They love to using the word safari or tour, So Hypergrid Safari is not the only one, but Hypergrid Safari is a pretty big club. There have been occasions where there've been over 50 of us at a time, hypergridding to an interesting destination, probably crashing it in the process because it's on somebody's home server. But there have been some very successful adventures, shall we say, where we've managed to get 50 avatars traveling in a group happily, and it's just a great social place to hang out and chat with other people who are into exploring as well. So we Thursday I was speaking to the other day, who's principally the organizer there, is whether on our way to finishing the old Hypergrid Safari build in ye old Linden Labs Second Life. It's on a region that was donated by Pathfinder Lester, who himself, of course, used to be a Linden. I think it's part of his old Linden land. And that's going to be, there'll be events, but principally it's a place to attract people who are using that platform who've possibly never heard of the open metaverse and think the whole metaverse is the Linden Lab. Well, it's not a metaverse if it's a walled garden, is it? But you get the idea. So that Safari base, as it were, you won't be able to go on Safari from it because it's not on the Hypergrid, but it will be there as a kind of embassy to sort of promote the very best of what's happening out on different Hypergrid destinations. So look forward to that. I should think by the end of the month that'll be alive. Well, you can go there already, but the new build will probably be finished by then. So I think that's it for this week. As I think I mentioned earlier, there is going to be no in-world review following this show this week. It's simply a matter of timing because we're late and because, well, I don't know, there's probably a lot to discuss, but we're going to leave it till next week to do that. The main thing is we got the news to you, isn't it, James?
That's right.
We are the weekly news hounds here.
That's right. The show must go on.
Maria will be here next week, of course. She was here today on time, but rather than hang around, we just said we'd do a quickie without her. So fair's fair, I forget what it was she said she was doing, but it sounded very interesting, so let her get on with it. Okay, well, thanks for watching, folks. I hope you're enjoying bringing you the news here. Do get in touch with us, by the way. James, you can probably get in touch with if you have any developer news and things. Maybe you are not in the developers meeting at the Open Sim Core, as it were, but you are doing development work and want to let us know about it. If you have new interesting regions opening, did tell us about that. Obviously, we do want to hear about new grids coming online. Basically, we don't do special features on special grids or anything, but we, want to deliver the news and let everybody know what's new and what's coming. And of course, bearing that in mind, also events. Any events you've got going, if you can let us know in the week by, say, about Friday, and they're serious events, shall we say, let us know and we'll try and plug them here in an event roundup. But I think that's it for now. Nothing else from you, James, I guess?
Nope, all good.
Nope. Okay, so thanks for watching, folks, and we'll be back with our next bulletin this time, or maybe a couple of hours earlier, hopefully, next week. We'll see you then. Bye for now.